Welcome to Hawks Leave Home Part 1, our post-high school planning night for the class of 2026. My name is Robin Morath. I am the post-secondary counselor here at Maine South. The rest of our office in the CCRC includes Mrs. Lucas, who's our career coordinator. She's not on this call, but she's a wonderful resource as well. And we're super excited to welcome our new CCRC assistant, Ms. Sarah Hayes. And she will start as of this recording next week on the 18th. If you're watching this later, she may already be with us, but she will be a friendly face and a helpful resource as well for our students and families. So now that I've introduced the CCRC, it is my great pleasure to welcome our admission reps who are joining us for this presentation. Mrs. Rosa Golombicki from Marquette University and Mr. Scott Carlson from Elon University. So they are going to be here to share their wealth of knowledge, their many years of experience in several admission offices, but the idea for this night is really to talk through an overview of what the college application is like now that senior year has begun. So with that, we're going to talk about these items. This is what our agenda will look like. This is a part 1. So part 1 is a general overview of these topics. Part 2 will be more nitty-gritty logistical items and like a live demo of me using Common App and Schoolings to show you how to support your students, if you're a parent or guardian watching this, or students yourselves, for how to link Common App and Schoolings and actually request letters of recommendation and things like that. But right now we're going to talk about how those things are used in the process. So let's start with the parent role. So Scott, maybe you can start us off with talking about what the parent role should be in this process.
Yeah, we definitely want you to be a part of this process, but not being the main person on this whole process. Obviously, we want your student to be the one who we are interacting with the most, since this is their future. This could be their potential future home at our university. So I always kind of use the kind of metaphor, the analogy of a car. And so we want the student to be the one in the driver's seat. We don't want the parent in the back seat. We do want you right there, just in the passenger seat, right next to them, because they're not always thinking about every question that they need to ask. And that's sometimes great when you can chime in to ask those kind of helpful questions that the student is not thinking of. But what we really want to avoid is the parent being the one that completes the student's application. It happens more often than you think. We'll see like the student's name, first name is Cody, but then the preferred name is Susan, and her date and the date of birth for Cody is 1970. So we definitely know the student was not the one filling out this application, that mom was doing it, and she accidentally put her name in as a preferred name and her date of birth. So now we're having you guys call us later on, a month later, be like, hey, you keep calling me Susan, and we don't know why that is. It's like, because mom did the application. So definitely we like the student to be the primary contact. Like hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll see that Rosa and myself, as well as we can speak on the other half of a bunch of admission colleges out there, that we're friendly, nice people. We are on your side. We want to help you, so you should never feel afraid to reach out to us or ask us any questions, because that is literally why we have this job. And this is your first time going through this process, but this is not Rosa and my first time going through this. So we are happy to take any and all questions, and we know this is your first time, and we're happy to answer any of those very basic or easy questions that you're afraid to ask. Rosa?
Yeah, I would just add, it definitely, this is a family decision. And so I certainly want parents, like Scott was saying, definitely playing that active role, but really letting the student take the lead. So students who are watching this, absolutely take ownership of this process. You are about to be a full-fledged adult going to college on your own for the first time. So it is time to start really taking ownership of your communication with the college, with the admission counselor. Like Scott said, we are very friendly. We are here to help you. So it is your time, students, to really take ownership. And I think really, reminding your parent, I've got this, I can do it. But we all know that sometimes students need that little bit of nudge. So definitely remembering this is a family decision. But students, I encourage you to really take ownership of the process. So yeah, I guess that's a good segue to the student role, and talking about what is your role as the student. So we do always prefer, and we've alluded to this a couple times already, but Scott and we've been working in college admissions for quite some time now, and it is so impressive and helpful when we do see a student reaching out to ask their questions or to be proactive in scheduling their visit or asking about upcoming deadlines or scholarships. When a student is really being proactive with us, whether it's when we come and visit Maine South, they come and talk to us, or they come up at the college fair and they're really leading the conversation, that's a really great way that we're going to be able to take note of that. And in the admission process, we're going to be more likely to advocate for you because you are really taking ownership of this process as a student. So, your role, students, is really to be involved. You have a great college resource center on campus at Maine South. And so, really taking full advantage of all the programming that's available to you, you're going to be set out on the right foot. Scott, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say that, like, I know from colleagues of mine in this industry that back in the day when the parents who are maybe on this recording later on watching it, that it really was back in the day when maybe you were applying to college, that it was the admission counselor versus you. And that's not the case anymore. We are truly on your student's side. We want to be your student's biggest cheerleader and advocate through this process. So build that relationship at whatever college you are looking for. There is a Rosa and a Scott who works with Maine South students. So Mrs. Morath has a full list of them, but if you can't, all you do is basically Google the college's name and then find my admission counselor, and their link will pop up for that university's website with each counselor who controls what schools or what states or what counties. And you can then see who your person is that you should be reaching out to for any general question, then build that relationship up, because then we can help you on the back end, pushing your student along for further consideration for admission, for scholarships, maybe for a heavy direct admission program. Like, the more I know you, the more I can advocate for you.
That is such great advice. Thank you. So this is a good time to announce when you can officially see some of our college reps in person. So as Rosa and Scott mentioned, you can always reach out to them via email, but we also invite them into our space, our annual college fair. So some of you may have already attended a college fair. Last year it was here at Maine South. This year, because we rotate among the 3 Maine high schools, this year it will be at Maine East on Wednesday, September 10th. So put that in your calendar. You can register now for it. Students can get your barcodes. Barcodes allow you to scan with the reps so that it is mutually convenient for both of you. The reps get your information and you get the reps information. So it's a wonderful tool that we use. That is also the night of our post-secondary expo. So we run them simultaneously. Our college fair is just as it sounds. It's a college fair. At this point, we have over 110 reps already registered, and with about a month to go, or a little less than a month, we expect that number to increase greatly. So we'll likely have close to 150, 175 admission reps present. Our post-secondary expo welcomes partners in the community who work with students who are following maybe a non-traditional path after high school, which does not include a 2-year or 4-year college. So trades, apprenticeship programs, etc. So those, it's a great night to be able to see all of your options in one place. More information and list of attendees will be sent out in the next few weeks. So look for that on Parent Square, which is our new parent communication tool, as well as the CCRC website and the Class of 2026 Google Classroom. There are also options to drop in and get application help. I'll actually talk a lot more about this in the Part 2 section, but just so you know that there are resources, as Scott and Rosa mentioned, the CCRC is here to help students. And so we'll have more information on this as we move through the fall. There are also opportunities to meet with the reps one-on-one. So after the college fair, in fact, the next day, we will start our college rep visits in person in the CCRC. And more information on how to sign up for that will be available as we begin the school year within Google Classroom. I will say that the college fair is open to parents, guardians, students. Parents can come if students can't. Students can come without their parents, but college rep visits at Maine South are for students only, and it's during the student student day. So unfortunately, we don't have room to host parents and students. So this is a student only event. Okay, so in terms of the college application process, we know that it's kind of starting, senior year. Obviously, the fall is time for application. But what if students are still trying to decide where they want to apply? If they're trying to still build that college list, maybe Scott and Rosa, you could talk about some of your resources. This slide will show some of our resources that I can also highlight. But if there's ones that you use, because even though Scott and Rosa work specifically for an institution, they're also counselors as well, and they know a lot about different schools.
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of Big Future, funny enough. And so that is right through College Board. It's really great. And I would say if you are not a fan of, or maybe just don't like the way it's structured or the way it's laid out, there are very similar ones to Big Future that you can use instead. But Big Future basically is kind of like a search engine where you can put in specific things that you want about a college, like you want to be in an urban environment, or you want to have big sorority fraternity life, or you want to be a distance from home. Like you can throw all those things in a Big Future and it shoots out a list of colleges that fit the criteria that you gave. If you don't like the way it's laid out, there's similar websites to Big Future like Apply, it's Appily, as well as Niche, Niche. So very similar to Big Future, but just different types of search engines, kind of like Google versus Yahoo versus Bing, like whatever you're using, it's up to you and whatever you prefer. But definitely there are different search engines out there where you can put in different criteria that you're looking for in a college, and it'll give you a good list. And maybe ones you never heard of before, which would be great ones for you to start looking at, because obviously it has a criteria that you're looking for in a college.
I also think, just adding to that, I know that Mrs. Marath just talked about the college fair, and I know that 2 hours seems like a lot of time, but when there are 150 to 175 schools, that time's going to fly by really quickly. So I think just how you approach that college fair, you might find a school that you never even knew existed that could be a really good fit for you as well. So, clearly, ultimately we do get a lot of applicants from Maine South. So, my line is usually pretty long. I do want you to come talk to me, but I also want you to maybe not spend your whole time in that line. Go and talk to some schools that maybe you've never heard about before. And I think a lot of college reps would have very similar advice, because that might be a way, again, that you might learn of a school that could be a really solid fit for you that you just never even knew existed. So give schools a chance that don't have that brand name that maybe you've heard about before, and it might surprise you.
I love that advice. Thank you so much. And Apply and Niche, we'll add that to the transcript summary. So parents and students can also have access to that, since it's not on the slide here. But I'm just going to shout out a couple ones on the slide. The yellow icon that you see, that's SchoolLinks, which is our college and career platform. It did get a bit of a glow up over the summer, so it is now yellow, bright yellow, instead of the green color that you may be used to seeing. But it still works very similarly. There's some new functions that are on it, but the college search piece is there. It works very similarly to Big Future. You can filter, you can add things that are important to you. So we really recommend that. SchoolLinks is also incredibly important in just the procedural aspect of college applications, because it does have to, you do have to sync your Common App and your SchoolLinks, spoiler alert, in order to move forward through the process. That's more of a part 2 initiative, but SchoolLinks is definitely something that you'll be on and using throughout the fall. The icon next to SchoolLinks, you can see the AI. We do recommend students use AI, ChatGPT, to form college lists. Like anything with AI, you need to cross-reference. So if it pulls up a school that says has your major and the distance from home, but maybe it doesn't have some other key things like the financials don't work out, or maybe, it doesn't actually really have your major, because sometimes AI isn't as up to date as we would like it to be, even though it seems like it would be. So there are errors with it. So you always need to cross-reference, but it's kind of fun to pull up Big Future or School Links and then see what ChatGPT says as well. The other ones on there, the FISC guide, which is in the lower left-hand corner, that kind of greenish and blue book, that's a great book. Some kids actually still like to look at physical books, parents too, so that's a great guide. We have copies in our CCRC, or if you prefer your own copy, you can check it out in the library or potentially order it online if you like to have to own your own copy. So whatever you do need to kind of build a list. I'll just kind of give some advice in terms of how many schools you should be applying to. I advise between 5 and 10. I think more than 10 gets really a lot to manage, because it's not just sending the applications. There's a backside of it, which is you need to manage the applications once you submit. And there's a lot that goes in that is involved with that. But we also want you to have options. So for students who are only applying to 1 or 2, that might, it's still a good idea to kind of explore your options. Anything you want to add to that, Rosa or Scott, about like numbers wise? Obviously there's extenuating circumstances or outliers for some students, like musical theater students. I definitely recommend applying to a lot of schools because it's so competitive. But for most students, 5 to 10 does the job.
Yeah, no, I agree with that number. I do think that to your point, it gets very overwhelming if it's maybe more than 10, because there are a lot of other things that you need to be considering. There are different deadlines for each school. There are different financial aid deadlines or scholarship deadlines that you need to be aware of. Maybe there are writing supplements or just additional things that you need to do. And so definitely, I think as much work as you can do now to maybe visit schools and build that list where you can have it be a little bit more precise and concise, I think that will really be helpful to maybe not confuse yourself as much, right? So yeah, I definitely agree with that number, if you can keep it to under 10.
Yeah, because you should be building your list with schools that are like likely schools for you, where you know you're going to get in. Those target schools where you're kind of like right in line, where you should have a pretty good chance. And then maybe a couple reach schools to see, maybe you can, maybe throw that Hail Mary, maybe it'll happen, maybe it'll get in, who knows. But you shouldn't apply to more than 10 just because, yeah, I would say 1, it's hard to manage, but 2, it's expensive. Our college application fees are anywhere between like $30 to sometimes $100. And that's a lot of money when you're paying that per application to go to all of these schools. So I would say no more than 10 is needed, because you don't really need a backup. If you're not genuinely excited to get that offer of admission from that school, you should not be applying to that school then.
Great advice. And I'll just plug, for our students who qualify, there are fee waivers available for those application fees. So talk with your counselor about that if you think you might qualify. Okay, many of you have students, I should say, attended the Common App workshops this summer. So thank you if you attended those. If you didn't, there are resources on your Class of 2026 Google Classroom to help you with the filling out of the Common App. So the Common App is the platform that over 1,000 colleges use. Both Marquette and Elon are on the Common App. Kind of a fun fact, Oakton College, our local community college, is now on the Common App this year. So it really does extend to a lot of different colleges. Chances are you're not going to escape the college application season without using the Common App. So that's why we do talk about it. So I just kind of want to orient you with the Common App. If it hasn't come up yet, if you haven't created an account yet, that's okay. There are many resources, again, on your Class of 2026 Google Classroom to help you with that. Okay, so let's now talk about sort of timeline and admission deadlines and things like that. So the Common App, which the slide that I just showed you, opened officially on August 1st. I always like to stress that it opened on August 1st. There are no points for being the first person to submit. We really stress quality over speed. So you want to do thoughtful and thorough applications as opposed to just making sure you get everything in as soon as possible. We really suggest that you meet with your counselor prior to submitting any applications. So counselors, we just met yesterday as a group. We will start meeting with our seniors next week. So be on the lookout for an email. So that's the week of August 18th. So if you're watching this later, I realize I should be give more contextual dates here. Make sure that you're meeting with your counselor before you submit anything, because once you submit an application, you can't unsubmit it. So let's talk about timing. So the application's open, that's great. You may have friends who've already submitted an application, you're not behind. So let's kind of talk through these application deadlines. So we're gonna start with early action. So
Yeah.
Rosa, you could talk about what early action means. You can see here there's a range. Depending on the college, there could be an October 15th early action deadline, maybe a November 1st or December 1st.
Yeah, definitely. So I can definitely speak to early action because Marquette does offer an early action admission decision. So early action is non-binding. And basically what that means is, or what early action means is that students are able to apply early and they're going to receive their decision a little bit earlier as well. There are some schools that maybe there are other perks and advantages to applying early action. Maybe there are certain scholarships that students are eligible for if they apply by the early action deadline. For us, students who are wanting to apply to our honors program, they can only apply to the honors program if they apply through that early action admission timeline. So I do think it's helpful to ask each admission counselor at each school that you're hoping to apply to this fall, just to say, hey, what application timelines do you have? What are your deadlines? And are there any perks to applying early action that I should be aware of? So for us, and like Mrs. Morath said, it is helpful to know that those deadlines do vary by school. So for Marquette, our early action admission deadline is November 15th. But there could be some as early as October 15th and some as late as December 1st. So just a general tip, and I know we're maybe going to talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, but as much as you can do something to organize all of your information, maybe you're a spreadsheet person, maybe you want to create a Word doc with your family, whatever it might be, or a giant calendar, that hangs on your fridge or something like that. Just really taking note of all these deadlines so that you don't miss them, because they do vary by school. And I don't want you to get lost in that, like, oh, Elon has this deadline, but Marquette has this one, and I don't want you to miss anything. So as much as you can take those notes, that'll be really helpful. And then regular decision is a deadline that we also have at Marquette. Regular decision is usually just a little bit later. So for us, our regular decision deadline is February 1st. And if you decide to apply regular decision, that just means that you're going to hear back a little bit later. So it's like pooled admission. So basically, even if you apply August 1st when the Common App comes out, you're not going to hear your admission decision until all of early action decisions are released or all of regular decisions are released. So that's kind of how those two admission pathways work as far as early action and regular decision. Scott, did you want to handle rolling?
Yes, definitely can. Rolling is a little bit different because basically universities that offer this, there's no firm deadline right away of when you have to get your application in. Usually they give it to you for months, and it's all based on when you apply. So if you get your application in, let's say September 1st, usually 2 weeks to maybe a month later, they're returning that offer of admission or whatever their admission decision is back to you. Whereas like Rosa was saying with early action, regular decision, it's everyone applies by this deadline, everyone gets their notification on this date. Rolling admission is based on when you decide to apply, and then usually a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month later, they're returning that admission decision back to you. So it's just kind of rolling throughout the year. Some schools may have a rolling admission deadline still. They might cut it off at a certain point. Then after that, it's on a first come, first serve basis of what spaces are they have still available. They're going to take applications. But I will say, even if they are rolling admission for admission to the university, they may not be rolling for scholarships. So there still may be scholarship deadlines they want to pay attention to. So if you need your application in so you can apply for certain scholarships, pay attention to those other deadlines that the university has, not just their admission deadlines. Even though they're rolling, they may not be rolling for everything. And then early decision is something that Elon does offer. A lot of privates, but the big news this past summer was that University of Michigan is now offering early decision as well. And this is a binding admission offer. It means that you are all in on that university. You're basically applying sight unseen regarding financial aid. And if you get admitted, you are telling that school, I'm withdrawing all of my other applications to those other schools and enrolling at Elon or whatever school you're applying to via early decision. Now, you will not accidentally apply this way. It's very intentional. You, the student, will sign a contract, your parents sign a contract, and your high school counselor signs a contract. So it's very intentional. And also, it doesn't mean that you will not receive financial aid. It just means that you're going to be, if you get admitted, you're telling the school, though, I can afford it, I'll be fine without financial aid. So it's very hard to get out of these decisions because you are signing a contract that you're going to attend that school if you get admitted. So just make sure it's something that you are for sure thinking it is doable, not only academically, but financially as well if you get that offer of admission, because it's very hard to get out of these decisions.
Awesome. Okay, so you can see there's just a lot of dates floating around, and as Rosa said, you need to stay organized. So this is a really helpful parent role, I think. Not that students can't do this, but more of like a project manager. If you're really good with spreadsheets or Google calendars, I've seen some families use, like inviting the student, in terms of like when the deadlines are, putting it on a paper calendar is fine too, but being very mindful. All of these dates are going to be within the Common App and on the college's websites. Just make sure that you're aware that they can range from as early as October 15th. Our friends in the SEC and ACC like to use those deadlines. Clemson, Georgia,
Auburn,
etc. The Midwest, we like November 1st or November 15th, but just make sure you're aware of those deadlines. Maine South recommends that you do early action as much as possible because it's non-binding. You can apply to as many schools early action as you want. We recommend that because of the incentives, because of the scholarship consideration, because of the preference if it's a very competitive major, i.e. nursing, business, engineering, etc. So please do that. What you want to keep in mind is you will not have grades for senior year. When you apply early action, that's okay. They will see your senior year schedule, which is why that senior year schedule is so important. If you apply regular decision, they will see your first semester grades. There are some instances where some students do wait because they want those first semester grades as part of the application. That's a case-by-case basis and really a conversation to have with your counselor before you commit to a deadline.
And sorry, I forgot, I wanted to add one last thing too, that make sure you pay attention to like the deadline times because it is by time zone. So if you're applying to school on the East Coast, if you're applying by midnight here in Chicago, that's 1 a.m. in North Carolina, and now you missed our deadline. So don't wait up until the very last second because you want to make sure you are paying attention to deadlines and time zones there because East Coast schools, you're an hour off now and you missed it now at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I think going back to the point that you just made, Mrs. Marath, about the early action deadline and then RD about, grades and when you'd be seeing those grades, there are sometimes that maybe if a student does apply early action to our institution, but maybe we do want to see some additional grades. We want to see those 7th semester grades in order to feel like we can make a well-informed admission decision. Schools might say, okay, we're going to move your application to regular decision because we do want to be able to see that 7th semester transcript. So sometimes in some cases, I encourage a student to go ahead and apply early action and let the school really determine if we want to see that additional information or if we need to see that additional information in order to see if you could be admissible to our institution. So just know that that is a scenario as well. And we will let you know if we need to see those 7th semester grades to feel comfortable or confident that you would be successful at our institution.
Right. What Rosa's describing is something called deferring a student. So you're deferred from early action to regular decision. And just as Rosa said, let the college determine if they're going to need more information from you, but don't wait because you're like, well, it shows initiative. It shows that you're interested in the school. Again, I mentioned there might be some outliers for students, but I would not just wait because you may miss out on scholarship consideration. And if you're admitted, you don't have to show those first semester grades, right? Which doesn't mean you should do poorly in the first semester, because senior year grades will be received by at least one school, the school that you're going to attend, and they will look at that to make sure that your senior year was still constructive and that you did well. Okay, let's go on to everyone's dreaded subject, which is testing. Testing, when I say this, I'm referring to the SAT or the ACT. As a reminder, all of our class of 2026 students took the ACT last spring as part of graduation requirement. Some of you may have tested additionally. Some of you may want to still test this fall. And some of you may have also taken the SAT in addition to the ACT. So can one of you describe what does test optional mean in terms of the college application process?
Yeah, I can take that one. So test optional means that in the context of our evaluation process of your application, we feel that we would have enough information to make a well-informed decision on whether or not you could find success at our institution, regardless of submission of your test score. So what this means is, I guess at Marquette, I can use us as an example. We evaluate applications in a holistic manner. So we're looking at everything that you submit, your transcript. On that transcript, we're looking at your grade trends, your rigor, your the grades that you've received in those classes. We're then looking at your activities list, which I know we're going to talk about. We're looking at your essay. We're looking at letters of recommendation. If you decide to submit them, they're optional for us. And then the test score will be just one other piece of that puzzle. And so I always like to use this. I heard this from a rep at University of Chicago, and she said, you know, if you've ever done a puzzle and you get to the end of the puzzle and you're missing one piece of that puzzle, you can still get a really good idea for what that picture was supposed to be. Oh, a beautiful garden, right? But maybe you're missing one section of the stream that runs through the garden, but you still really know what that picture is. The same thing is true for your application. And so if a school says we are test optional, that means that we truly mean that regardless of whether or not you submit a score, we're going to be able to feel confident about determining whether or not you could find success at our institution. So how should you determine, should I apply test optional? It's not something that we're trying to trick you. We will be incredibly transparent. If you talk to the admission counselor about, hey, I'm trying to determine, do I want to apply test optional or not? We will be really transparent with you. And usually we'll tell you something called our middle 50% ranges. Middle 50% means that out of 100% of our students who were admitted, the middle 50% who were admitted had a score between 25 and 30 for ACT, or 1220 to 1360 for SAT. So you can know, okay, my score falls in that middle 50% range, or it's a little lower, it's in that lower 25%. So maybe I want to determine whether or not I want to submit it. And you can have that conversation with us, right? So that's, I think, a really good way for you to know if you should apply test optional. I also think it's important to talk to each admission counselor about what does your test optional policy mean? Because at a school like Marquette, test optional means for all academic programs, even our really selective College of Nursing, you could apply test optional. And even if you apply test optional, which about 60% of our incoming freshman class did this year, you're still going to qualify for all academic scholarships. So there's no reason that you should be afraid to apply test optional. But at some institutions, the test optional policy does mean something a little bit different. So I don't know, Scott, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely second Rosa's opinion there about, asking the college university, just because unfortunately, there are a lot of schools who are now going back to being test required. You got Purdue University, Ohio State just recently made that decision. The Tennessee Publics, Georgia Publics, all the Florida Publics, a lot of the Ivy League schools have gone back to requiring test scores. But a really great link as you're starting to initially build that list is right here on the screen. Fairtest.org. That's one of my favorite resources. It'll show you every school, and then are they test optional, but also what are they test optional for? Maybe for admission, but not for nursing or engineering or business, or maybe for admission they are, but not for merit-based scholarship consideration, or maybe you need a test score for honors program consideration. So it's a good early, I would say, college building tool with fairtest.org, but things change from year to year, and fairtest.org is not always up to date. So definitely reach out to us and build that relationship, and we'll let you know if it'd be in your best interest to maybe apply with or without a test score. So that way you're getting your best shot for admission, but also for scholarships and honors consideration. One, I would say, with this dreaded topic here that I get the questions the most about students is about how they're going to look compared to other applicants. Please know we are only reviewing one applicant at a time. We are never pitting students against each other. So never considering like a student who applied test optional versus a student who applied with a test score. I'm not doing that. I'm reviewing one at a time. I make an admission decision and I move on to the next applicant. I'm never going to be looking at the two at the same exact time. And I think it's kind of funny, when I used to work for University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, we received well over 60, 70,000 applications. And when we looked at all the data, it naturally just, when we looked at our decisions, it was about 50-50 of who we admitted with and without a test score, without us even considering it. It just naturally blended that way, that 50% of our admits apply with a test score and 50% apply without a test score for admission. The only time that we saw the range skew into favor of a student who applied with a test score versus without was when the GPA was much lower than our average. So a higher test score with a lower GPA benefited the student for potential admission chances to our university. When the student had a great GPA and a great test score, obviously they're going to get admitted either way, whether they apply with the test score or without. So the only time we saw a big difference was when the student had a lower GPA, but a really high test score where it benefited them for admission.
Great. I would just say one last thing about that is make sure you have a conversation with your counselor. That's another reason why we meet with you to discuss these like nuanced case by case things, because my answer for one student may be very different than my answer for another student. It is very individual based on just kind of the holistic approach to this. Is the test score is just one piece. And I will say a lot of kids withhold their testing score when they actually probably should have used it. I see that more than the other way around. All right, let's talk about letters of recommendation. So in terms of like how to actually get a letter of rec is going to be in the part 2 video, but let's talk generally about what they are, what they're used for. So let's start. I'll start with the counselor recommendation. Sometimes it's called an evaluation. So if you see either of those terms, it's really the same thing, but it is not the same thing as the school report. However, the counselor would do both. So the school report is telling the colleges information about Maine South High School. So how many students are in our graduating class, how many AP and honors courses we offer, things like that, that are to help put students in context of their high school. Okay, so what we offer, you're not at a disadvantage if we don't offer a certain class. So for example, our math classes are not weighted, right, until you get to the AP level. So Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, it's just a regular level. You're not at a disadvantage because we don't offer honors. So in the school report, we tell our colleges that. It's also part of our school profile that has a lot of data on it as well. So your counselor will do that. Okay, that is the counselor's responsibility to fill that out. If a counselor letter of recommendation is required by the college, the counselor will also fill that out. They will discuss that with you during your one-on-one meeting, if you need a counselor letter of rec or not. There are many, many colleges that not only do they not require it, they don't want the counselor letter of recommendation, or maybe any letters of recommendation. And I'll reference U of I, Urbana-Champaign, Scott's former institution where he worked at. They are a school that does not want letters of recommendation of any kind. In fact, you can't submit them. They won't let you. Okay. So it's not that we don't want to write them. It's just that the schools are putting up the colleges are putting up policies in terms of what they accept and what they don't. All right. But so your counselor all will do a school report. Every college wants the school report. And then there may be a counselor letter of rec that also goes with that. Could one of you talk about the teacher letters of recommendation and how those are used?
Yeah, the teacher recommendation is great because we get to really see how you are as a student in the classroom. Please avoid freshman year teachers just because that was who you were so long ago. We really want to hear who you are now academically in the classroom. Now, if you have this teacher more than once, then yeah, they can talk about your growth, which is great. I will say one great thing about this, if you want to start building that relationship with me or Rosa, like the counselor at a school you're interested in, if they require a teacher letter, ask them this question. Would you rather have a teacher that knows me best or a teacher related to my future academic area? Because that answer will vary from college to college. So if you're looking for that great intro question, it's oftentimes not even a response that's listed anywhere on the website. So that can be a great question to ask that is very thought-provoking, and you can start building that relationship with the university admission counselor, that college you're interested in. But I will say, oftentimes, we really want to see how you had to work in that classroom. If this is a classroom that you love the teacher, but you never really had to do anything extra, you just went to class, did your work, got an easy A, what are they going to tell me about you? I want to hear about the teacher with the class. They had to struggle and work to get that B in that class, but they're going to tell me a lot more information about who you are academically and the extra work you had to put in. That will be a lot more thought-provoking of a letter recommendation than just an easy A. But definitely reach out to the universities if they are requiring a teacher letter and see who they would prefer it to be from. Do they want to be major related or just a teacher that knows me best? And I think that'll vary depending on the school.
And then Rosa, could you talk about other recommenders, what that means?
Yeah, so in a holistic review, we are trying to gauge not just your academic ability to succeed on our campus, but also we want to know how you will be an active contributor to our campus. And so we'll be able to tell that through things like your activities list or other things. But there are definitely other people in your lives who have seen your leadership skills or your ability to overcome an obstacle. And so definitely identify who are those key influencers who've been really instrumental, maybe in your life. Maybe it is a coach. Maybe like for someone like me, I grew up in the church. And so it was like my youth director was really someone who saw me grow a lot. So definitely just know that those other recommendations could be helpful because it would give us more context about who you are outside of the classroom and then therefore how you're going to contribute overall to our campus community. I think something that's really important for us at Marquette, especially as a Jesuit university, is our commitment to service. And so sometimes we've seen letters of recommendation come through from someone who supervised, the student when they volunteered for the Boys and Girls Club or something like that. And that's just really cool to see, okay, this student really does pay attention to their community. And so therefore they're going to do that when they get to our campus as well. So those other recommendations can be really helpful too.
Just one thing to insert, the vast majority of colleges do not allow for other recommenders. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So if you're like, oh, I have someone, oh, but they don't accept it and it's on a college by college basis, but they do accept a teacher letter, you can't insert your coach for the teacher letter. Okay, it has to be a teacher. So even though your coach may be a teacher at the school, but you've never had them in class, only the capacity as your coach, that doesn't qualify. So really keep that in mind because I've seen students insert, their soccer coach when he doesn't even work at our school. So that's just something just to be on the lookout for. It would be great if everyone accepted the other recommenders, but they don't always.
Yeah, I like that piece of advice because also this is something that I feel like I've been on enough panels with Scott before. He always shares this piece of advice too. So sorry, I'm going to steal it from you, but really follow the directions that the application is really laying out for you. And so if the directions from that specific institution, if they're asking for one teacher recommendation, then that's what we want. I know I can speak to like we have a very selective pre-dental scholars program at Marquette. We want one teacher recommendation from a science teacher who you've had, and we want one recommendation from maybe a dentist or someone who you've been able to observe or volunteer in their clinic. So we're putting out specific directions for those letters of rec. So really just make sure for each institution, you're following the directions of what they need and are requiring when it comes to letters of recommendation. Don't submit 47 letters of recommendation if the school says we don't need or want any. And that's not an exaggeration, that has happened before.
Yeah. So I'd say, yeah, just be very intentional and back everything up from that deadline. So we talked a lot about deadlines earlier. Your request to teachers has to be made 15 school days prior to that letter of recommendation. So we'll be reminding you of all of these dates and stuff, but just don't wait until September 30th to ask if you have an October 1 deadline. Okay, let's talk about resume and activities. So how are these used in the application process?
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll kick it over to you, Scott. So like I was mentioning, we are trying to gauge what type of student you will be and what type of community contributor you will be once you get onto our college campus. And so I do think that building your activities list in such a way that you are highlighting those things that are valuable to you, that you put a lot of time and care and attention into, that is something that we do want to see, because we want to know how you're going to contribute to our campus one day. The activities list, the resume. So in your common application, you're going to be able to list out your activities. And because you're doing that, we don't require that additional resume. Sometimes students do want to include it, and we will accept it. We'll look at an additional resume if you decide to. But often, what you're including in that activities list is actually very sufficient for getting a very good picture of how you spend your time outside of the classroom. I think that regarding the activities, we always encourage students to list the thing that is of the most importance to them as, the first activity on that list. Maybe it's not how you spend the majority of your time, but maybe it's the most important because it relates to your major or something like that. And then the other note that I have about activities is sometimes students work outside of school, and that prevents them from being able to be as active in the classroom, or excuse me, in the activities that the school has to offer. And so sometimes students are like, well, work isn't an activity. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And it's showing your leadership. It's showing your responsibility. Maybe you have some family responsibilities that are above and beyond what a traditional child would do at home. Maybe you pick up siblings and you make dinner for them because your parents work late or something like that. That is an activity as well to list, because it is taking time away from you being able to do school activities or other activities through other avenues. So listing those things will still give us a really solid picture of who you are as a whole individual.
Yeah, just remember in this section that we really want to see quality and not quantity. They give you 10 spaces, that's great. If you use all 10, kudos. If you don't, that's fine. You are listing in that activity section, not just the activities, but also the hours per week and the weeks per year that you're participating in that organization. Use your best guesstimation. We don't need to be exact. It's fine. Whatever your best guesstimation for your time spent doing these things is all we need to see here, because we just basically, at the end of the day, want to see, can you handle stuff with your academics? As long as you can handle your stuff and do academics at the same time, you're going to flourish on our college campuses then, because you're not going to college just for academics. There's a whole college and student life aspect that you're going to be a part of, and we want to make sure you can balance both there. So definitely just remember quality over quantity. If you do have more quantity over than 10, there are extra spots in the application later on where you can fill in other activities in there, or you can even double up. So you can maybe just do one bullet point for volunteer and just list the different organizations you volunteer with. Or if it's soccer and you do club and high school, you can list underneath one bullet point as well. But there was one thing I wanted to say. It'll come to me later on. I'll
And
throw
you
it in there.
Scott, you always
Yeah.
share about being well-rounded versus well lopsided.
But it was. This is why I always like presenting with you, Rosha. So yeah, I definitely use myself as an example that I feel like the myth out there is that you need to be well-rounded. You don't. That is definitely a myth that can be debunked. You can be perfectly well lopsided, and that's perfectly fine. Myself, as an example, I was on my high school soccer team. I did a club soccer team. I was a referee for a part-time job, and then I also volunteered as a youth coach. All soccer-based, but there are a lot of different activities and different types of activities, even though they're all around the soccer theme. And it showcased a lot of range in there. Same thing with a student who's maybe heavily involved in the performing arts. Maybe you're in theater, you're also in choir and chorale and all these different things. That's fine. You're showing a different range of activities and you're spending a lot of time and effort in these activities. Like I said, quality over quantity is what we want to see in this section.
Great. That's such great advice because I think the activities is just the most underutilized part of the Common Application, actually. Let's talk about essays, which we spend a lot of time talking about, and you all spend a lot of time reading. So how are these used? I'm just going to put some bullet points. There are resources on our Class of 2026 classroom, so make sure that you check those out if you haven't started already. The ARC is some place that you can go to get help with the writing, for the reviewing. That's a really great resource. And just, lots of people to proofread, but sometimes there are too many cooks in the kitchen, as I like to say. So just kind of be mindful of how you go about having people review, because everyone's going to have a different opinion. And then basically, if we could talk about, or both of you could talk about, like how many essays and how they're used, things like that.
Yeah, so if you are applying via Common App, there is a general Common App essay that you're going to have to write. And it's basically a personal statement. There are 6, 7 prompts, but I say 6 because 6 of the prompts are actual questions where you're writing and answering to that prompt. The 7th prompt available is basically like choose your own adventure. You can write whatever you want to write about. That 7th prompt is not a time to just submit your English paper. I've already read The Grapes of Wrath. I did not enjoy that book. I don't need to read your dissertation on your paper that you wrote about that book. So it should still be a personal statement that I'm learning about you. The great thing about the Common App that we want to see here is I just get to learn a little bit more about you outside of your application. Like, this is your time to really showcase your voice and hear who you are, because most of the application is very just quantitative. It's your grades, your classes, your name, your biographical information, who your parents are. This is me. The essay is that qualitative piece. I get to finally hear your voice, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings on an event that happened in your life or things you want to do with your life. The Common App is a great time. I would say it's really, why do you want to go to college? And then colleges may have supplementals, and the supplementals are the time to turn on why do you want to go to my college. So this Common App prompts that I mentioned, personal statement, should be nothing specific. It should just be all about you. Don't mention any colleges at all. We see it every year. I see a kid be like, oh yeah, and that's going to be a Hoosier at Indiana University. I'm like, that's great. We're not them. And now this is going to every college that you apply to with the Common App. If a college asks for a supplement, a lot of times certain colleges have like the why us or why this major. How do you feel like you'd fit in our campus community? There are a lot of different types of supplements. That's when you want to go heavy duty research on that school, geek out on that university, and share why you want to be at that school. That's not the time to be general and just be like, oh yeah, I can't wait to go there and play Frisbee on the quad and go to a football game and join a fraternity. Like, that could be any college in America. Do your research, talk about a professor you can't wait to take a class with, or there's a certain research project you can't wait to be a part of, or there's a certain specific club or activity that is so cool to this university that you cannot wait to join when you get on that college campus. Look at their social media, look at their websites. What are they talking about? What is important at school? And those are things you should be highlighting in the supplements, not in the main Common App essay. Common App essay really is just a story where you're sharing about why this is who I am. Here are things maybe I've gone through my life and why I came out of it and I'm better for it now. There's several different types of questions, some based on identity or interest, like who you are, some based on overcoming an obstacle, some that you're writing about what you find so heavily engaging and kind of like who you would not be without this certain activity. There's a lot of different types of essay prompts that you can choose from and write about. Don't freak out about them. We want to hear from you and not the parent. And we don't want you to write about what we think you want us to hear. Just write what you want to share with us, and that'll resonate a lot more than trying to think about what we want to hear and writing in regards to that. Don't do that. Rosa, what do you want to share?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm glad that you said that, Scott, because I was going to define the role of the parent and the student, because I do see that in this part of the application, sometimes it is pretty obvious, like, oh, mom or dad wrote this essay, and we don't want to hear from mom or dad in this part of the application. We want to hear from the student. We want the essay to read from the authentic voice of a 17 or 18-year-old who is just starting out and trying to figure out what their next step is. So we really do want that authentic voice. So I really like this bullet point about one person should proofread it, but be careful of too many. We want you to have it edited so you're not making silly grammatical errors, but we don't want you to have it over edited to the point that it's no longer your authentic voice as a student who is taking off on this college journey. So I think students, you are the one writing this essay. Parents, maybe your role could be to be a mirror for your student and help to reflect back, hey, what do you want the college to learn about you? What are some leadership skills that I've noticed in you? What are some traits that I think are really cool and unique to you? What are some stories that I think could be really cool? That's the parent's role, a parent's or guardian's role, is to maybe be that mirror and help to reflect. But then students, it is your job to actually write this and to have it come from your authentic voice. I think something else, I know we talked about AI, using that to help like build your college list. AI can also be used as you're trying to brainstorm your essay. I think if you're looking for some brainstorming tactics for your essay, I do really highly recommend the College Essay Guy. I think that he has a lot of really cool brainstorming practices that you could go through, or exercises, I should say. So, but you can use AI to help brainstorm, or maybe what's a good way to have this outlined, right? But AI should not be writing your college essay, because we can also tell when that has happened, and that's not going to put a good taste in our mouth either. So those are just a couple tips.
And then I will say too that you might hear from people that there are certain topics you should stay away from. I don't think there's really any general topics that you should have to stay away from. Like, we do see a lot of mission trips. We do see a lot of sports injuries. We see people talking about their grandparents. Like, those are fine. But as long as you are making sure you're casting a spotlight on like a spark, a moment that really impacted you, that's great. As long as you're not casting this giant floodlight and sharing general facts about a story, then I can easily remove your name, put another student's name who went on that mission trip, and not even notice difference. So make sure you are capturing that moment, that spark, and that'll make it really unique and personal to you. Even if it is a very general, well-used topic, that's fine. The only thing I'd ever try to stay away from is don't ever write an essay about breaking a law. It's never lands well. And no matter what school you go to, you have to sign our honors code that you're going to abide by our rules during college. And if you're already breaking laws now in high school, it's not going to bode well for you on my college campus. I don't know if I want you at my school then.
One last thing that I'll say, I know we need to move on, but one last thing that I'll say about the essays is that spell check is not your friend when it comes to essay writing. It could be maybe a good first check to see, but sometimes you could be spelling the word correctly, but it's not the correct word to use within the context of that sentence. So again, spell check is not your best friend when it comes to that. Scott sometimes shares an example of how a student wrote a story about how they went hunting, and they meant to say they were hunting for pheasants, but they said they were hunting for peasants. And so it turned really awkward really quickly in that essay that he was reading. So the word peasants was spelled correctly, but it was not the correct word to be using within the context. So make sure that, again, that editing is going to be a helpful piece. Okay, moving on to financial aid. Did you want to start this one?
Sure. Thanks so much for all of that great information about essays. I know we could probably do a whole discussion on just essays as well as this topic, financial aid. So I want to give an overview. We're not going to go into nitty-gritty details for sake of time, and also because every financial aid situation is different. So depending on your own family situation, there may be things that you need to learn more about. In terms of financial aid, what I want you to know right now by the end of this session is that there definitely are resources, but the biggest thing that you need to do is put on your calendar when the FAFSA opens. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This is what you have to fill out to be considered for any financial aid on college campuses. So to determine if you're Pell Grant eligible, if the colleges would award you potentially merit-based, but definitely need-based aid, this needs to be filed. It's also a graduation requirement for all students in the state of Illinois to have this completed by May 1st of their senior year. It opens on October 1st this year. It is now mandated by law that it opens on October 1st. So if you are watching this and you have older children, you know that in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of upheaval with the FAFSA. So now we think things have kind of calmed down. Personally, I filled it out last year for my own son. The timeline was a little different, but it took about 20 minutes to complete. So it is, I think, good to go. So we'll open October 1st. It doesn't close, just like the Common App. It doesn't close the day it opens. If you cannot fill it out on October 1st, it's fine. If you're thinking it opens October 1st, but my application isn't due until November 1st, should I wait? You don't have to. Your Common App and your FAFSA don't talk to each other. So you can send your FAFSA before you even send your Common App, and then eventually it'll all match up. So, and conversely, you can also submit your Common App first and then your financial aid later. However, there are deadlines for financial aid. So especially for students applying early decision, there are priority deadlines that usually fall about 2 weeks after the early decision deadline. So just be aware of that. You are going to get so many emails and so much communication from the colleges that you apply to regarding financial aid. Just kind of parent role, student role. Sometimes they go to the parents and sometimes they just go to the students. So students, forward anything related to college to your parents' email, just to keep everybody in the loop, especially when it comes to paying for college. It's really important that everyone is on the same page. We will host workshops throughout the district. So each of the mains will host one workshop this fall. Some of them are during the week. There's a Saturday one. We'll have more information and confirmed dates very shortly that we will communicate with you. On our website, the CCRC website, I also have this 2-page handout. I know it looks really overwhelming when you see it from this view. Once you read through it, it's a really good guide. I highly recommend that definitely parents and guardians read this. Students also. It's good to know what financial aid is, because sometimes that term is used to mean a lot of different things, and it kind of breaks down need-based aid versus merit-based aid for you and all that entails. So I would definitely check that out. We can talk now a little bit more about paying for college beyond potentially financial need-based aid in terms of scholarships. So this is where I'm going to ask Scott and Rosa to give us some scholarship tips. A quick note from the Maine South side of things: please apply to College First before you worry about local scholarships. Local community-based scholarships, those don't even become available until late fall, maybe even early winter. So there's nothing to look at. So I'm showing you a screenshot of our schooling scholarship site, but if you go there right now, you're going to see things from last year for the class of 2025. We don't start updating this until later this fall. So please apply to colleges first. I'm going to call back to remember those deadlines: November 1, early action. There are also priority deadlines for scholarship consideration. The best source of money is from the colleges themselves. Okay, so if you have a cost of attendance of $40,000 per year and the Park Ridge Panhellenic Club is giving you $1,000, you got $39,000 to go. My point is, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to pay for college only on outside scholarships. You are going to be relying on merit-based scholarships from the college and universities themselves, as well as potential need-based money, which will be determined by filing the FAFSA. Okay, so a lot of times kids get their priorities mixed around and go scholarship, scholarship, scholarship. It's college applications first. Your favorite scholarship, either search engines or pieces of advice. Rosa, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely think that when it comes to the cost of attending college, I do think that a lot of families might look at the sticker price, so the cost of attendance, and get a little nervous, especially at a private school like Marquette or like at Elon. But I do just want to really emphasize what Mrs. Marath just shared, that the largest way that we offset the cost of attending our universities is through those merit-based scholarships. And so I do think it's important, like Scott was mentioning earlier, you will have one of us at every institution that you are applying to. And so this is a really good maybe introductory question to ask your admission counselor as well, is what scholarship deadlines do I need to be aware of? Or is there a certain date by which I need to apply in order to, be eligible? Are there other scholarships that I could apply to at your institution? Just having the scholarship conversation with every institution and then taking really solid notes that include those deadlines. Maybe you are setting calendar reminders. That's going to be really important. For a lot of schools, especially private institutions, just by applying, you're usually considered automatically for merit-based scholarships. And in your acceptance letter to the university, you're automatically going to know what your scholarship amount will be. There's also this thing that a lot of or actually every school is required to have it on their website. It's called a net price calculator. This is something that the government requires that schools will have on their websites, where you are able to get a general sense for what your cost of attendance after scholarships, after some need-based financial aid, you can get a general sense for what your out-of-pocket cost would be at that institution. And maybe that's a good number to just estimate and figure out, okay, is this school even within reach? Is that within budget for our family, that it would be realistic that you could attend this school, right? So utilizing us as the counselor to have those conversations, preliminary conversations about scholarships and deadlines and things, and then utilizing things like a scholarship estimator, which is typical on schools' websites, or the net price calculator. I think those resources will be helpful.
Yeah, I second everything Rosa said. I think it's really, really good advice. I would say just outside of that, just other opportunities you can use for any scholarships. One, know that a lot of universities offer current student scholarships. So just know you can always add money on later on while you're on that campus as a current student. So it's not like the end all be all. That's just the incoming freshman scholarships. There's also other scholarships you can always receive from that school later on as maybe you get more into your actual major, and they have some major specific ones they offer for juniors or for seniors or sophomores, like whatever it might be. But for outside scholarships too, don't always scoff at those $500,000 scholarships, because get a couple of them, it adds up and it can add up some pretty big money. I know for myself, I had a left-handed scholarship, but it paid for my books every semester while I was at college, which was fantastic. So there really is a scholarship for everything, believe it or not. For a search engine I like to use is one called Appley. I mentioned it early on. It's a great college search engine, but it's also a really good scholarship search engine too, because you make a profile and it actively matches scholarships that best fit you. That way you're not like endlessly searching on like scholarships.com or FastWeb. It does all that work for you and matches you with scholarships you actually have a chance at winning, or earning, I should say. The other one is one I don't like to push, but I've had a lot of students had success with it, is an app called Scholly. It's SCHOLLY. They did go on Shark Tank and they got an investment, I think, from Lori and Damon. So they are legit. It's a real thing. But it does cost a fee to use the app. But their whole niche is that they pull scholarships that often go unfunded and kind of bring them to the forefront. And so that's also a great one to use potentially if you're okay with paying the fee to use it. But I have had several students have some really good success with that app.
Awesome. I'm going to just go back to this slide because Rosa mentioned some things, the net price calculator, tuition estimator. That is covered in this very overwhelming, again, looking at it from this view, this 2-pager. It actually will walk you like like steps of things you should be doing. Like number one, you need to just know what the cost of attendance is at the schools, and just educate yourself, because as Rosa mentioned, maybe there's a school that is just too expensive and you're just going to take it off your list. You're not going to waste your time, energy, etc., on a school that you ultimately can't afford. I always tell kids when they're building their list, or families, really, it's a family decision, right? It's sometimes the number one piece of the puzzle is your budget. Start with your budget. So if you don't have a budget, get a budget. And if you're a parent or guardian watching this and your student asks, what's our budget? And you say, don't worry about it, they need to worry about it, because you don't want to have them go for 1 year and then the next 3 years just are unaffordable and then they have to transfer. It might be the first real adult question that they're asking you, like, what's the budget? And be honest with them. What is the budget? You don't necessarily have to give an exact number, maybe a range, but saying, don't worry about it. It is something they need to worry about, because ultimately it does affect their decision-making in terms of where they're going to go because of the affordability factor. So this has a lot of great resources on there. Okay, I know we're getting close to the end here. One last thing about I don't want to, because it's the last slide, it's the least important. It's actually really important, especially in today's age. Social media and admissions, your social media presence can play into some things. Here in Maine 207, we definitely advise students to watch what your presence is. Any forms of bullying, hate speech, discrimination, harassment, or hazing are absolutely unacceptable, and can affect you in the admissions process. So Scott, can you kind of talk maybe through some of that, or some anecdotes or anything that you have to offer?
Yeah, I would say just, really stay away from these things as best I mean, as you really should as a person. But I would say, just because we do get anonymous posts sent to us, and sometimes it does affect then that student's admission to our universities. I've seen it happen time and time again, regarding hate speech, discrimination, harassment, where then, like I said, we are having you join our college community, and we want to not offset our campus community balance. And if you're someone who's going to come in now and potentially hurt our campus community, we're not going to want you on our college campus. So things do get sent to us, Facebook posts, Snapchat groups. I've seen different Instagram posts and stories, and even the Finstas that are out there, like, they get sent to us by students who are anonymously sending, like, this is who you're admitting to your university. So it can have repercussions. So I would try to stay away from this the best you can, as you should. But just because, it does sometimes come back then around. Rosa?
Yeah. When you are applying to our university, we do have you check a box indicating that you are aware that by applying to our university, you are already adhering to our university honor code, which includes, going against bullying, hate speech, discrimination, all of these things listed here. And so by you checking that box saying, yes, I understand that I am already living up to the Marquette Honor Code, if we do find some of these things, and it has happened for sure, it doesn't always automatically mean that we will rescind your admission. It has happened before, but I have known students who, when things are sent to us, we do have to take it seriously, because like Scott mentioned, we are trying to gauge your application as a whole person and how you're going to contribute to our community. And so we want to make sure that we keep our community safe. And so we have had students have to have some really hard conversations and really hard meetings with, university leadership before they're given the green light that they can indeed enroll at our institution. And so just think about the reputation that you want to have, not just here in high school, but think about the reputation that you want to have going onto your college campus. You don't want this to be a way that you're starting out your journey in your new college home is coming in on not the right foot, because you had to already have, a disciplinary meeting in order to talk through some of these, your social media presence. So yeah, just think before you write something, because screenshots are everywhere, and just really think about what comes out of your mouth before you say it.
Okay, any last tips or best practices for our students and families?
My big one I always love to share is that I do really recommend making a separate email account specifically for college. So as you're starting your Common App right now, I recommend building a brand new email address, whether through Gmail, Yahoo, whoever you want to use is fine. But just naming it, like for me, scottcarlson@gmail.com or scottcollege@gmail.com. That way, one, it's professional, but two, they're not going to lose access to it. Because Mrs. Morath, do they lose access to their main South email when they graduate?
They do, typically July after graduation. So it is a little bit of ways, but yeah. And if you've already started using your Main South app, you can change it on the Common App. There's like a little gear in the top right corner for settings, and you can go ahead and change it if you would like to.
And I would, just because whatever school you decide to go to, we still have to communicate with you throughout the summer about move-in dates and move-in times, your shift, your roommate, what you're going to be bringing. So you have to be able to talk through all this stuff, and we can't reach you because your email is now deactivated. That's not good. But it's professional, it's there. But also, I will say, as a former high school student many years ago, I was not the best in checking my high school email every day. Parents are a lot better at that. So you and your parent can kind of like own this email account together and both be kind of checking it. And now, because this email account is specifically for college, only colleges you're interested in are going to this email address here, which is great. So you don't have to worry about any other colleges you're not really interested in emailing you your school account. You can just delete those and you're good, because everything here is what you want. And you create folders, so you're not missing those important dates and deadlines. Like Rosa was saying early on, so all different deadlines for admission, for scholarships, for housing, for honors. It'll help you keep everything well organized and being professional.
Yeah, and we did that with my son last year. He had a separate email. I didn't have his login credentials. I didn't want that. And at some point we had to cut the cord, right? But what I did have him do was forward me anything that had to do with the application, financial aid, scholarship consideration, so that I had eyes on it too. Because if you apply to 10 schools, you're going to start getting communication from 10 schools. And it's a lot to manage. Not that students can't, it's just helpful to have a guide with you. And that's a really good parent role to add on as like project manager. I think I said that before.
Yeah, so that's a good segue to kind of my, I guess, piece of advice. And I know I said it earlier, but I definitely think find a way that you like to organize yourself. Whether it is, I live and die by my Outlook calendar. That's my work calendar. But I set calendar reminders for everything. And so maybe that's a way that you like to work, is setting a reminder for this application deadline is coming up in a week. Maybe set another reminder, it's coming up in 48 hours. So you're not missing those important either application deadlines, but also scholarship deadlines. I also think another just, I guess, final tip, hopefully a big takeaway that you've gotten from this, is that Scott and I and everyone who does this type of job, working in admissions at individual colleges and universities, we do this job because we really care about students and we really want to help you be successful in this application process. So I guess my final tip would just be, get to know your admission counselor for every institution that you're planning to apply to. Maybe you just send an introductory email. Maybe you want, reach out and we can meet up at a local Starbucks, or we can do a virtual meeting, or we can meet at your individual rep visit at your high school. But definitely come and meet with us, because this will be something that will allow us to just be better advocates for you in this process. So that's my final piece of advice.
Awesome. And I'm just going to pull up your slide again with your contact information, and just a little piece. I know that Rosa's last name is looking different on her square tile than it is on the screen here. She is Rosa Glumbicki, and that is her correct email address. Just a little technical glitch with not being able to change the name on Google Meet. So these are resources for you. Our reps are wonderful resources, as Rosa said. So please do reach out to them, and they're happy to answer any questions. I want to thank Rosa and Scott so much for your time. Invaluable information, really. It's just wonderful. We can't thank you enough for all of the wealth of knowledge that you have and your commitment to working with our young people through this somewhat stressful process. Having gone through it, I'm on the back end, and everyone's still alive and still talking to each other. And my last piece of advice is it can be stressful, but please enjoy it as well. Okay, some of these moments, campus visits, are some of just really great alone time with your students or one-on-one time. You really see them through the journey. It's exciting to look at the opportunities, but also be practical about what those opportunities are for you and your family. Okay, so with that, we're going to sign off. Scott and Rosa, again, thank you so much. And I will be posting this on our CCRC YouTube channel along with the slideshow so that you can see the different links and access them as well.
Thanks, everyone. Best of luck.